Welcome to In This Corner. I'm Cyrus Fees. On this episode, we are going to keep it right here in the Midwest. And of course, a couple of the pioneers from the old school that is mixed martial arts and some of the trailblazers that made it what it is today, a booming industry. And then one guy who we're going to get to right now who's still in the business today, still promoting. So that's very exciting. We're going to have a little bit later, we are going to have the Maniac, the former UFC heavyweight champion, Tim Sylvia. Excited about that one, man. A lot of good stories there, I'm sure. But we're going to kick things off here with a guy that has been promoting for a long, long time. And when I say that, we're talking about 24 years in the business. It's amazing that the guy's still with us because it is a very, very stressful position. We're going to the one and only Monty Cox. Monty, welcome to In This Corner. I'm excited to have you here with me.
Well, thanks a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Monty, you're one of those guys that a lot of the MMA fans may not know your name, but they know what you've brought to the table, especially when you talk about the fighters that you've introduced to us and put on shows, guys that you've managed throughout the years that you've put in the UFC. And a lot of people have been to your shows, especially if they're in the Midwest. I know you've done a ton of stuff in the Midwest. So let's just talk about it. You've been in the business since about 1995 as a promoter and as an agent eventually. Talk about how you got involved in mixed martial arts.
You know, at the time I was the sports editor and news editor for the Quad City Times. I was a newspaper editor for 18 years. And you get a lot of weird calls when you're at the desk. And I got one, and this guy says, look, we got a local guy. He's going to Chicago. There's no rules, no weight classes, no time limit. And I go, shut up. I never heard of this. And he goes, I'm telling you, he's going up there and he's going to kick ass. And I'm like, all right, you got my attention. Give me a number. So I call, and the guy says, before you trash us, come down to the gym. Let me show you what we're doing. So, I was I dabbled in boxing, had some pro fights and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, we'll take a look. So go to the gym, and they're wrestling. I live in Iowa. Who doesn't wrestle? Your sister wrestles here. And then you look over, and they're doing boxing. I get that. And then he says, let me show you what jiu-jitsu looks like. I was flabbergasted. Never seen anything like it. They're choking me, joint locks, arm bars. And I'm like, I didn't even know this existed. Yeah. And he's like, exactly. And he goes, imagine now two guys who train in all of this going against each other. And I said, all right, you got me hooked. I go, I'm going to go with you to Chicago. Yeah. So we go to Chicago, and, the guy I'm talking to turns out to be Pat Miletich. Yeah. And he throws these guys around like rag dolls, 260-pound guys, don't last 2 minutes. And there's at St. Andrew's Gym in Chicago, right by Wrigley, there's 3,000 people in a place that holds 2,000. It's crazy. I could barely even squeeze in. And as a promoter, you love to see that. Of course. And I was so excited. I said, I can't be crazy. This thing is going to go huge. And on the way back, Pat's saying, we got to do a show. We got to do a show. And I'm like, because I was already promoting boxing at the time. And I go, man, I don't know anything about MMA, or then no holds barred, they're calling it. And he goes, you're a promoter, aren't you? He goes, you can do it. And Pat has a way of talking you into doing things. Trust me, And so I said, if we're going to do it, we're going big. We're going to go to the brand new, the Mark of the Quad Cities, 10,000 seat venue. We're going to play this up like it's a monster. And it worked. We drew 8,000 people, and we only had one problem. I didn't want anyone to know it was me promoting, because I'm already in the newspaper. I'd rather not. I get a call from one of my reporters, and he says, "Hey, the sheriff in town, or the police chief, he's unhappy. He wants to know who's promoting this thing." And I said, "Well, I'll take it from here. I'll get back to you." So I call the police chief over lunch, and I disguise my voice and say, "This is Fred Burns from Indianapolis. I'm promoting it, but I'm headed off to Europe. if you want to talk to someone, Monty Cox is helping me out. And then I waited till about 2 and I called as Monty Cox, and he goes, hey, I don't like this. You have Mark Hansen, you have the Davenport police officer underneath it. And I said, no issue. I won't print any more like that. We won't mention him as a police officer. And so, dodge that bullet, right? You know, because I didn't want to be. And then later on, it came up in the news meeting. I'm running the news meeting. And one of the reporters says, you know, I got a story on this fight that's coming up, and the police chief not being happy. And we're in, my job is to decide, does it go front page? Does it go inside? And I said, look, guys, I'm helping out with this, so I'm going to take a step back. I don't want to influence in any way. And they decided, you know, this is front page. I sold another 1,000 tickets by putting it on front page, you know. So that was our start, 8,000. And, you know, I was off and running. I think I stayed at the paper for 5 more months. I had to go exactly 7 years to get fully vested in my 401k. But the day I could get out of there, I was out of there. And that's how I got started.
That's awesome. And, you know, it's funny because, you know, we had Pat on and we talked about some stories, and he talked about, you know, where you didn't have a whole lot of tickets sold, and you informed the media that there was the human cockfighting going on. Of course, that was the term that John McCain used back then. And before you know it, you sell it out just based on controversy and protests.
Well, I picketed my own show.
Oh, so you were out there picketing?
I wasn't, but I made the picket signs, and I paid 3 guys to go out and walk up and down and say, we don't need this in our neighborhood. That sold me 3,000 more tickets.
Wow. You know, it's bananas. And, you know, it's funny, and I'm going to veer off just for a second. Actually, I'll veer off into Pat Miletich territory here, which obviously Pat's very involved with what goes on in the government and conspiracies and everything. And I don't know. I don't know how much you subscribe to all that, but that being said, you know, a lot of people are talking about these protests and these riots, and about, you know, them bringing people in who are not necessarily, you know, citizens of that place and all this. And basically that's kind of what you did. I mean, you basically, you know, manufactured some protesters, and it ended up working out well for you. Do you kind of see some of that and you're like, oh, that's like an old promotion deal that maybe I did back in the day?
Yeah, with a lot less destruction.
Yeah, thank goodness.
And stuff.
Right?
I did a show at Market Square Arena in Indianapolis, and this was a special show for me. I grew up in Indiana, and you know, the Market Square Arena is where they hold the basketball championship.
Oh, yes. And one of the Pacers, you know, as well. Yeah.
Yeah. But they're nothing compared to high school basketball.
This is true. The Hoosiers.
In
yes,
there, you know. And so going back there was really special, and it's a huge place. And I was struggling, and I would call the newspaper. I used to work for the Month's Evening Press, which was owned by the same company as the Indianapolis Star and News. So I'm calling, they go, we don't think it's sports, it's entertainment. Entertainment, go, that's sports. No one would run anything for me. So me and 2 of my friends sat down. They had a thing called Call In, and you would call in and you could say anything you wanted, and they print it, and people would comment. Well, he's going, hey, I hear we got this crazy show coming in, people killing each other and stuff like that in a cage. And then I'd come on as me and go, wait a minute, you know, it is exciting, but this is controlled, blah, blah, blah. Then another guy go, I saw one of these. It was unbelievable, guys slamming each other and stuff. And I go, yeah, it's exciting, but it's safe. And we did this for, I don't know, 2 hours. And an hour later, my phone rings from the Indianapolis Star. He goes, dude, you're lighting up the phone line. I got to do a story. And I'm like, oh, okay. And we did the whole story, and I ended up doing 4,000. So it wasn't too bad. I always tell people it couldn't have been too good, because 6 months later they tore the building down.
Oh gosh, yeah.
That's a bad show when they tear the building down after. You know.
Well, you know, but the funny thing is, you know, all I hear when, you know, I've dabbled in promoting a little bit down here in East Tennessee. A good friend of mine named Casey Oxenine, he's a coach around here. He's coached a lot of fighters, managed a few guys, but he promotes as well. And he's very frugal, and he's very smart about the way that he does everything. But then on the flip side, you know, I see promoters all around the world that just, and even in the States, of course, that just go and get the biggest arena and spend the most money, and they're done within maybe 2 shows. A lot of times just the 1 show. It happens so often. So I want to dig into that because, and I know there's a lot of people that watch this and they want to hear, what happened with Matt Hughes and what happened with Jens Pulver, and they want to hear all that stuff, and that's cool, and we're going to get to that. But I want to talk about the promotion side of it because I don't think people really understand what goes into it. It's not just, well, a lot of people don't understand because they try to do it and they lose their minds and all their money. But, they think you get a cage, get an arena, slap it down there, sell some tickets, and you're off and running. Yeah. There is so much that goes into it and so many little, charges here and things. It's just like any business, right? Talk about the promotion game and maybe stuff that you've figured out along the way, some hard lessons that you've had to learn, and what's kind of made you the promoter that's still doing it today, 240 shows strong.
Well, the biggest difference is in the old days, you had no help. I mean, I was a one-man crew. That was it. I'd have someone when it was time to bring my cage, they'd drive it for me and set it up. But as far as the promoting, it was just me. And at one time I was doing 4 shows a month. I was doing 40 a year. And so I would go from one town to the next town to the next town. I just kept traveling. And, everywhere you go, you have to have a venue. You got to make that deal. You have to have an ambulance deal. You have to have a hotel deal. You have to get posters made, radio spots made. You have to make a radio deal. And then you got to find locals to sell tickets. Then you got to find a place that sells tickets if you're not doing Ticketmaster. I mean, if I'm going out to the fairgrounds in Mason City, I don't have anywhere to sell tickets. So I got to find a bar in town that's popular, and I got to publicize, here's where tickets are. And then I move to the next one. So when I'm in Davenport doing a show, my head is two or 3 weeks down the line at the show I'm trying to get done in Omaha.
Sure.
You really got to be way ahead. If I'm in Davenport working on Davenport, oh my gosh, I'm in a world of trouble down the road. So you got to think ahead. Nowadays, you come in and you have the commission and they give you the guidelines. They assign your referees and judges. Everything is not, you don't have to worry about them. You don't have to duck them too.
But you also have to pay for that though. I mean, depending on what state it is, that could be a pretty sizable chunk of money.
Yeah, especially you go East Coast, like New Jersey or California or Vegas, it's very expensive. Yeah. And Midwest, not so much. The Midwest, it works harder to try to get you in, but still it is a lot of costs and all that. Now back in the day, I knew right away. I did that 8,000 show, the 6,500, and I think my next one did 4,500. And I realized right away I wasn't going to be able to sustain big shows like that running as much as I was doing. And so I needed a smaller show, not Extreme Challenge. Maybe I called it Cage Combat. And that had maybe a Miletich on it, but then some amateurs or lower. And then I did for amateurs, I did Extreme Challenge trials. And I bring them all together. And that way the losses didn't count against them, but they got to work out and they got to practice and see what those shows drew like 500 people, but they made money.
That's it.
And then I did weekly shows. I had 3 weekly shows that I was running at the same time. And when I was doing all of this, that's when I broke into Japan, and I started going to Japan every other week, taking guys to rings. And Pride over there. Yeah. And then by the time we got to 2007, I got hired by M1 Global as the CEO. Now I'm going to Russia and going to Amsterdam every other week. And
that's a whole nother story too.
Oh my gosh!
Working in Russia, that's
crazy. Yeah, I quit because I thought they were going to kill me. I'm not kidding. That's no joke. That's why I quit. They paid me $500,000 a year as a salary, and I quit. Now who's going to quit that? A guy who thinks he's going to get killed. That's
fair enough.
But anyway, yeah. So I mean, I had all this going at once. It was just, I was out of my mind.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine. You really can't turn it off ever. Just the matchmaking side of it by itself is enough to put somebody in a mental asylum. I mean,
It is.
it's bananas, and dealing with coaches and dealing with fighters and make sure, they get their medicals in and making sure they have the right opponent and making sure their opponent can make, I mean, it never stops. And, luckily I only did a few shows myself and I didn't even fully promote, but I was a big part of it and I matchmaked it. And heck,
Right.
I matchmaked a card that was 2-on-2 fighting on an obstacle course in Virginia. So, I mean, I had 10 fights, but I had 40 fighters to account for in a type of fighting that was never been seen in the States. So just absolutely bananas.
Did they fight against each other at the same time?
Yes,
Oh, wow.
they certainly did. Yeah, it was a concept that they had in Russia. It was called Hip Show. So, I mean, it's viral. You find it still on the internet everywhere.
I've seen it.
Yeah, they're falling off of platforms and all kinds of stuff. And we brought it in and we did it in Virginia because at the time, Virginia had no amateur sanctioning at all. So, they just kind of laid back and let us do our thing.
Wow.
They do have it now, but it was like the Wild West. So it was a lot of fun.
That's how it was. The whole country was that way for me when I started. And the biggest thing, like I did a show in Lansing, Michigan. I'm thinking, who can I get in Lansing? And I thought Kevin Jackson. He's, he was fighting in MMA at the time. That's his hometown, Olympic gold medalist. And man, I hit it right. I had, in the first 2 weeks, I had sold almost 3,000 tickets and it was going really good. And then I got to 2 weeks before and I get a cease and desist from the Attorney General. Come to find out, someone who worked in the office came to the venue I was going to use, saw a poster, took it back and said, "Do we do this?" And actually, I'd already done 10 shows in Michigan, but the Attorney General said, "We're not saying you can't," because I said, "This isn't illegal," and they said, "We're not saying it is, but we're going to have a hearing on it on such and such a date." And I said, "Well, that's 2 days after my show." And they go, "Oh, is it?" I go, "Oh, gotcha." I go, "All right." I'm running back to Iowa. Leave me alone. And I had to take the whole show and I moved it back to Iowa because they just weren't going to let me do it.
Yeah, it's part of the game, and you got to be able to pick up and move and damage control, and there's so much to it. And literally, Monty, we could talk about this all day long. And I truly think it is absolutely enthralling just to hear about this stuff because I've been down that road. And
right.
Until you do it, you just don't understand what goes into a show.
One thing I will say is when we were doing it back in 96, 97, 98, the fighters were completely different. I could make a lineup of 8 fights, 16 fighters, and a month later, I still got them all because no one wanted to drop out. These were guys, they weren't fighting for money. There wasn't much money. They were fighting because these were fighters. These are guys, if they're not doing it in the cage, they're doing it in bars and stuff, or they're just very competitive. So I had guys hiding injuries from me because they didn't want me to take them out.
Yep.
Now, compare that to nowadays. That's the biggest difference in the fighter is it was nice being able to make the lineups and not worry about it. And everyone fought everyone. No one cared.
This is what I was just about to say that because, right now you got amateur guys, they may be 3-0 and they're wanting to cherry pick their opponents. And it's like, guys, it's amateur. It doesn't matter. I mean, when you turn pro, that all goes away. You're better to learn those lessons now. And if you get beat, learn that lesson and become a better fighter. And it's crazy, especially when you get into a small town and you get a small little bubble, small little environment. These guys don't want to give up any sort of, cred. And they want to be big fish, small pond, whatever, but they don't want to take that loss. And you see some matchups that just blow your mind.
You get a guy 0-2 saying, "Man, I'd love to fight in your show, but I'm fighting for the belt." I mean, you're 0-2. What belt is that?
Right.
But that's what they care about. It's really funny how you hit it on the head. I mean, the pockets of these people with it, they're all on Facebook or something, and they thrive on that. Yeah. And I'll come in and go, "Look, I put 200 guys in the UFC. Don't you want to And the smart ones, the ones who have a chance, they're all like, I'll fight for free. I want you to see me, like what you see, and help me. But those other ones, you know, it's funny, you say a lot of the things I say to people. My thing with all the fighters is, I'll tell them, I go, do you know what Rich Franklin's amateur record was? And they'll go, no. And I go, neither does anyone else, because it doesn't matter. You know, I go, no one ever says, what was Matt Hughes's amateur record? I go, amateur is practice. It's the same as what you're doing in the gym. Doesn't count. And and if you're not beating everybody in amateur, you shouldn't turn pro yet. Yeah. You know, I've had guys come up to me and say, look, I'm 0-6 in the amateur. I think I'm going to try pro. And I just go, let's see how that works for you.
Let me ask you this. This is an interesting topic that I like to dig into. The difference, and this is interesting because you've promoted boxing. And you got a big fight coming up here as well with Pat Miletich and Michael Nunn, which is going to be exciting. And I want to talk a little bit more about that. But that being said, so promoting boxing and promoting MMA, I you know, obviously there's the conversation about CTE and the conversation about the dangers of fighting, of course. And, you know, I kind of maintain that MMA is safer just because it's not an accumulation of shots nonstop to the head that you get with boxing. But one thing about the promotion side of it that's always kind of boggled my mind, and it really amazes me that commissions allow it, is when you're building up a guy as a boxer, and this is in the pro ranks, you get journeyman guys, and I even hate to even call them journeymen, guys that are maybe 8 wins and 72 losses. It doesn't seem like it should be possible. Like
it's getting harder.
Can you defend? Is there any defense to it? Do you have a defense to that? Because I don't understand how these guys are allowed to come in and just walk in and get knocked out if they have such an upside down record. A lot of the times in MMA, they defend that and they won't allow you to do those sort of things.
Right.
They'll be like, you know, so-and-so can't turn pro because, you know, he has an upside down record, or we won't allow this. We can't, you know, pass him. But somehow boxing, you get these matchups and it's like, what the heck is going on here?
It's funny to take a great boxer, even Ali, you know, take Ali and go down his record when he started to his first 15 fights, and you're like, oh my God, he fought, you know, terrible guys, but everybody does. And the reason that happens, when I was promoting boxing, Don King and Bob Arum signed everybody, but there weren't enough fights. And so I did a show. Frankie Toledo was the reigning world champ. Okay. And Don King sent me Toledo and an opponent, decent fight, just wanted me to put it on. He paid for everything. So they run out of places to put them. Well, one of the things they'll do is someone will have a big show in Vegas and they'll say, look, I got 4 guys to put on. Just give them fish. And they don't care. That's why no one comes to boxing in the beginning, because it's all first round knockouts of the stars. And that's acceptable, which is crazy because I've had guys, I won't say who, but, you know, well-known commissioners tell me, Monty, I don't think this thing's even. And I said, do you want me to pull up that last boxing show? They go, yeah, that'll be fine. Because it's like, seriously, do you want me to pull up, you know, like you say, the 3-73 guy that fought the 18-1 guy? Man. And you know, we need journeymen. There are not enough for as many winners as you have to have losers. Agreed. And the winners, once they get to that 10-0, even earlier, they're not going to take any risk because their next stop is title shot, you know, and they'll wait 3 years. But you got to have somebody to do it. And a lot of those guys, those journeymen, their records are bad, but they're better than the record. They know they're supposed to lose. So they'll go in, and the main thing they have to do is not get knocked out, because they're fighting on Thursday. You know, they're fighting 3 days later. There it is. You can't get knocked out. And there were guys from Milwaukee, a guy named Donnie Pendleton. And if he wanted to, all the club champions, he'd beat all of them. But as soon as he did, no one would take him again. They don't want you to beat him. They want you to come in. Wow. The local guy gets a win. He sells all the tickets. That's how those small shows work. but he's really good. He could be competitive, but instead he has to lose. That's what he gets paid to do.
I'm telling you, man, the one thing is, and I hate to go back to this, and I'm not one of those people that harps on this. Obviously, get knocked out is no joke. I mean, it's no good for you. I mean, it's not good on anybody's brain. And these guys that are getting knocked out 50 to 60 times, God, you feel for these guys. You know what I mean?
That's in sparring. Forget the fight.
You're right.
They're
I
getting
agree.
knocked out routinely. I mean, 50 is a generous number for a guy who has 100 fights, and there's a lot of those, or 50 fights. I hate to think their brain must be. I mean, I got knocked out. Well, no, I got knocked out more in the ring, but it was close.
Yeah, it's
close.
It's such an interesting sport, but that part of it has always kind of boggled me. And I do love boxing, but that part of it just seems a little wacky sometimes. But that being said, not only have you promoted, but obviously you've been an agent for these guys, and you've sent them to the UFC and to Pride and accompanied them. And you still, to this day, I know you probably have a humongous. What's your roster look like right now, guys that you manage?
I turned 60 on Friday, so I'm really I really am cutting back, and I think
so. Just like 100 guys?
No, like 22.
Really, just 22?
50. Used to carry 50 all the time.
Okay.
Now it's 22, and mostly new. I mean, my guys also kind of started retiring.
Yeah.
And I'd say selfish, quitting. I need that money. but as they all retired, it was time to start over.
Yeah.
And unlike most managers, there are managers and there are agents. The agents are the guys who pick you up when you're in the UFC, and all they do is negotiate contracts pretty much.
Of course.
The manager takes guys that are 1-0. I got Matt Hughes when I saw him first 1-0. Rich Franklin when he was in the amateurs, I saw right away what he had. Pat Miletich 0-0, from watching him in the thing. All of the guys I took were from the very beginnings of their careers. And that's the fun part for me, is traveling in the car with them and all the funny stories, and they'll tell you how horrible a driver I am and how I run off the road. But that was the fun part of it for me, the camaraderie with all the guys. And then when they're in there, someone loses, you take it to heart. This is the guy you travel with. Matt Hughes lived in my house for over a year. Jens Pulver lived with my family. These are family, they weren't just fighters. If I just pick out a guy at the UFC that I never met and say, I'll manage you, if he loses, how do you feel the same? You can't feel the same. Yeah. And that's what that part of the game is kind of going away. We're getting guys who, I was always fortunate because I got in early and I had a great connection, but I see trainers and managers working their butt off for no money early. And as soon as their guy gets some notoriety, someone jumps in and snaps him. Yeah. And that guy's left, he did it all for nothing. And it's frustrating,
Sure. Yeah, you're right. And, I know a guy that we both know real well, and you've managed him, Sean McCorkle, big, sexy, if you will. And he always hilarious.
He's funny.
Very, very good. And when he had gone down to Australia, he was fighting Soa Palele, and that's where he and I met. And he always said really good things about you, and really said that, that you took care of him and that you negotiated well for him. Right. And, Monty's going to handle it. Monty handles this, And so he always had really good things to say about you. And I can imagine that dealing with Sean McCorkle on a daily basis, dealing with this guy had to be interesting, because I've only had limited interactions, and he is a wild card, to say the least.
I had a state full of them, of guys that are all different, but it was fun.
How do you manage those personalities? How do you manage those personalities? Because I'm sure they come at you from every different direction with different emotions, and furious at you at some points and loving you at other points. How do you deal with that range of emotions from these guys?
You have Jens Pulver with 4 personalities right off the bat. You don't know what he's in the back of the car arguing, and he's just him. I mean, this really happened. When it was Matt Hughes in the front with me, we're driving somewhere, and I get a call that says they may want Jens to fight Hallman. And he had told the UFC, anyone but Hallman. He don't like him. They were enemies in high school. He goes, I don't want him to gain any notoriety from me. And he goes, I'm not fighting him. And I go, Jens, they want you to do it. And he goes, I'm not doing it. He goes, I'll tell you right now, I'm not fighting that guy, but I'll knock him out. That's what I'll do. I'll knock him out and stand over him, but I ain't fighting him. I'll take my belt and throw it in the garbage. I ain't fighting him. I will knock that guy out. And then Matt Hughes would sit beside me and go, cuckoo, cuckoo. And he's in the back the whole way arguing with himself. I mean,
yeah.
One thing that was good for me was being a newspaper editor. I had as many as 300 people, under me. And you go to a lot of training seminars on how to deal with people and personalities, and you have to figure out who's who. Some guys, every day they want you to come up and pat them on the back and say, boy, you're doing a good job. Other guys, if you come anywhere near them, they're, what do you want? Leave me alone. Just let me do my work. And everyone is different. So you learn how to deal with people. You figure out what they like and don't like. And that's what I did with fighters. Who do I need to call? Who do I need to say everything's okay? Guys like Franklin, I don't have to do anything. I mean, if you could make a perfect fighter, Rich Franklin would call me and say, Monty, I just got done doing my meds. Anything else? And I'm like, dude, you're amazing. I don't have to tell him. He goes, yeah, I called him and said, what meds do I need? And I went and got them. And I'm like, this is not normal, And MMA fighters are way better. MMA way better than boxing.
Really?
Way better because they're better educated and stuff. Boxers, half the shows, someone pulls up in a van and they don't have the guys you made the deal for. I go, what do you got? And he goes, I got a 32-pounder, a 60-pounder, I got a 68-pounder. I'm like, do they have names? I mean, do you even know? Did you just, you go, no, they grab them from a bar in Milwaukee and go, you want to make $200? And they bring them down. And that's how it worked. They were just weights. And that's what I liked getting into MMA when I could have an actual conversation with all of my fighters. That was nice because I wasn't able to do much of that in boxing.
Okay. So I got a two-parter here, and I want to get maybe the greatest feeling and the greatest, moment that happened, with one of your fighters, something you look back very, very fondly on. And then I want you to give me on the flip side, the worst you felt, dealing with one of your fighters. It could be a fight result. It could be maybe some sort of a breakup or a separation from a guy that maybe hit a little bit harder. I mean, give me the good one first. Give me the good one first. Don't give me the bad one first.
Yeah, because I could cry on the second one. I have two great moments, and they're both pretty brief. Everyone has seen the one, which is Matt Hughes and Frank Trigg, and Trigg choking him and him. I was there live. I'm there.
Oh, wow.
And to have him pick,
classic.
I thought it was over, and Matt pick him up and run him across the ring. That to me was, I always say, the greatest fight I've ever seen. And it just was, because I knew all about the intangibles. I knew Frank. We knew why they didn't like each other and stuff. And the other one was Andre Roberts, the big 400-pound Meskwaki Indian.
Yes.
I had put him in the UFC at a last minute to fight, oh my gosh, who was Gary Goodridge.
Okay.
And Goodridge clocked him in the nose, broke his nose. He'd never been hit like that. And he turned and waved it off and then realized, oh, what did I do? And he was so embarrassed by that he had to make it up. And then we came back to it was a show in Iowa. I had 7 guys on the card, and he was fighting Waterman. And Waterman is huge muscles. If you want to look this up on
H2O,
it is amazing. And so Andre starts off, and he's getting hammered by Waterman. He's bloody. They pretty sure he broke his nose. They stop it after 2 minutes. Doctor comes in and says, your nose is broken. Do you want to stop? And Andre goes, not this time. And the next thing you know, it turns around and Andre is doing a little better. He gets pushed against the cage and they're almost ready. Big John's going to stop it. And boom, Andre hits him and staggers him and then hits him again and drops him. And then jumps on him and pounds him and wins. And it's the first time in a show that I was running and jumping. It was just so exciting because Andre and Tyrone, we're very good friends. And
yeah,
you know, Iowa guy, we discovered him, and it was that one I always look back and just say, that was one, how great for him to be able to go on and push that Goodrich thing back. For sure. Now give me the tough one. Well, the bad one just happened, with Tom Sauer.
Okay.
And I got to come up with a different one. I'll start crying. Let me come up with something different. No, I'll do Tom. I can do it. Tom was really special. We traveled everywhere. Amsterdam, Japan. We traveled together all the time. And he knew my family. I knew his. And a month ago, when I woke up and saw that he died, I just lost it. It just was so,
yeah.
I still haven't recovered from it. It's just, I know I've lost my parents and things like that, but this one was just, he wasn't old. It was just a really weird thing. And I had just talked to him 2 weeks before, which was good. Talked to him for a couple hours. We laughed. We had a great time. And then to all of a sudden be over was, it's still really hard for me to believe it, so
yeah,
that's the hardest. I mean, you become so close to these guys. They're just like family.
Absolutely.
And he was just such a unique, he with his Tourette's and everything. God, he was so funny. The stuff he could do.
Yeah.
The words he said were so terrible that I remember walking through a mall and trying to walk as fast as I could because he's chirping nasty words behind me. I'm afraid I'm going to get my ass kicked. And, but in Tourette's, you say things you don't normally mean. And so he was something else. But yeah, that was the hard one. When you get that close, to lose something like that, it's still just a month old. So I'm still messing with it.
Yeah. Well, Monty, I'm sorry to dredge that up for you, and for sure. And I know the fighting community, I saw a lot of outpouring and for that. So yeah, I didn't realize how close you guys were. So man, I'm very, very sorry to hear that. I never had a chance to meet him, but from what I understand, just a great guy though. So
yeah, he really was. He was what this sport is about. He wasn't great. He was good enough to fight in the UFC, and he fought in Japan and did okay. But he was just genuine. You knew what you were going to get. He was never going to squit. He'd come out and he surprised people. He beat Egan Inoue and knocked out Valentin Overeem.
Yeah.
Things that he'd come out with. And then I just ran something yesterday of the photographer Keith Mills came up with a run of pictures, and it was when he knocked the guy out, jumps up on the cage, jumps down, picks the ref up, and runs him around the ring. And then someone else runs a picture of him running the ref around the ring in Hawaii. I mean, the guy was just hilarious.
Yeah.
So definitely. That's definitely the worst so far, without a doubt.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, nothing really can compare to something like that. Well, man, yeah, let's wrap this thing up and talk about this fight coming up, man. Let's see this, because this is exciting. It's going to be a lot of fun. Obviously, Pat Miletich, coming out of retirement to compete, and he's going to be boxing Michael Nunn of all people. Man, I'm excited about this. I've seen a little bit of the buildup, but kind of give me some details, because I think it's going to be something special.
This all happened when those two guys. I used to travel as a reporter with Michael Nunn, so I went to Ecuador, Mexico City. So he and I know each other very well. Obviously, I know Pat, and they were all coming to my show, and we're talking. And Nunn goes, man, he goes, I just got out of prison. You got to give me a fight. I need some money. And Pat goes, well, he goes, they're laying us all off. Give me a fight. And I said, I don't think I can make any money with you guys at all unless you're fighting each other. I said, that I could promote. And they kind of looked at each other and go, we do that. And all of a sudden I got this weird feeling. And I'm thinking, I could sell that. I could sell it. They're the two greatest fighters to ever come out of the Quad Cities. One from Davenport, one from Bettendorf, big rivalry. One from boxing, one from MMA. I go, I couldn't write this script. You know, a blind guy, Stevie Wonder could do this one. And we started talking about it. I go, don't get me going if you're not serious. And they both said, you know, we want to do this. And then Pat is very much about world affairs and stuff. And he says, this is the fight to unite. We're going to, you know, a black man, white man, we're going to fight, and then we're going to show unity. And he said, this is what the world needs right now. We need to talk about this. And you know, Pat, he's not just saying it, he's dead serious. Oh, yeah. You know, a lot of people say what they need to say. Pat is very serious about the world. Yes. And so we tried like crazy to get it scheduled, but they needed so many medicals. I mean, a lot of them, echocardiograms, things like that. And I got sponsors for all that. And then we sent it into the Illinois Commission because we wanted to do the Tax Layer Center where I did my first show. Yeah. And then the virus hits, and they never looked at our medicals, the commission, so they never got anything. And the commission in Illinois still is stay home. So we were not going to be able to do Illinois, not this year. Yeah. And they want to do it. I mean, they're 56 and 52. How long do we got? You know, maybe hours.
The window's getting shorter. Yeah.
I mean, I'm just hoping. I said we'll give you guys a ride down to the ring, so you don't waste any energy. You know. Gosh. And but we decided to look at. I went out and looked at the Mississippi Valley Fairgrounds and found a huge parking lot there. You know, you go to a fairgrounds when the fair's not on, and it's massive.
Oh yeah.
I'm used to seeing all the, you know, the fair and all that stuff, so you don't realize how massive. When it's empty, you realize. And so we found the spot. It'll hold about 16,000. And at the time, Iowa had a 50% capacity, so I'm like, I can at least do 8. Well, they've dropped that, so now I still have to do the spacing, which we've done, but we could hold 8 to 9,000 if we can get it. Yeah. And we'll be in the neighborhood. I'd say 5 is in the neighborhood. Yeah. If you can draw 5,000 nowadays, that's still very good. Oh, especially for small, you know, promoters. But yeah,
it's good.
So they decided to do it, and it makes you wonder what happens. I mean, I've sparred Nunn. I know his hands are. He was, you know, people forget about him. He was the number one. He was Mayweather. He was the number 1 ranked fighter in the whole world, 35-0. Couldn't touch the man. He's got a 1.5 foot reach on Pat, and he's really good at pushing your head with his range and then popping you with that left. And he could put Pat out with 1 punch. Now, and they still have the power. You know, you can talk to Tim Sylvia about that. You know, with Mercer, they got the power. They don't lose it. So he does too. And no one in MMA punches like Nunn. It's, you know, he's a different level. But Pat's got real good kicks and a decent chin. And if he can get inside and kick a 56-year-old leg that's never been kicked, that could be 1 kick, right? Absolutely. So that's what we don't know. People say, who's going to win? I said, honestly, I have no idea.
That's a good fight.
If it's boxing, it's easy. It's MMA. It's easy. This is really, I'm going to watch like everyone else.
Yeah, no doubt. Do you have any plans on getting a broadcast anywhere? Is there going to be anywhere people can watch it?
I think Pat's going to stream it. He's got a new company, a streaming company. He's tried it on one event, but the idea was to stream it and maybe do like $9.95 or something. So it's affordable for everyone who is interested to take a look. Now, I don't know what the interest is outside of, say, Iowa. Inside, we've already sold over 1,000 tickets. All the expensive tickets are going fast, but I have read some things going, oh, those guys are old. If you're not connected to them, maybe it's not as big of a deal. But there's a lot of people that those two have touched in both sports that are interested in, and seeing what happens.
There's purists out there. There's hardcore and purist guys that they hear that Pat Miletich is fighting on the MMA side, or that Michael Nunn is fighting on the boxing side, and they're going to be interested immediately. It's getting those guys obviously to the streaming platform and getting them to watch. But I think it's very, very possible, especially in the current day and time, and who knows what sports look like. If you can make that happen, there's not a whole lot of options out there.
I wonder. Is there another fight promotion going on before me since the virus? I mean, not in Iowa, not in Illinois, not in Nebraska, not in Wisconsin. I mean, is there anywhere? I mean, there are people, LFA's holding events with no crowd.
Yeah.
UFC.
Well, I mean, I'm literally doing one this weekend coming up here in Tennessee, but and they're allowing it and doing the social distancing and.
Oh, okay, then good. Then someone is. I was going to say,
yeah.
I don't know.
It's a state by state thing, so who knows?
Yeah, I couldn't with mine. We were going to do earlier, and I said I just need more time. We need 6-7 weeks.
Yeah, you should
do it right, and I'm glad we did because there's still a lot of work to do.
Absolutely. Well, Monty, thank you so much for giving us the time, man. And this was a fun interview, and I would love to do a part two down the road, because I think there's so many more things that we can talk about and so many great stories. I know that you can dredge up and give to us, and I know the viewers will love it. But,
you only got to 1997.
That's what I'm saying.
I could do a whole show on the Russia thing.
Gosh.
Or Kuwait, when we went to Kuwait and the Russians attacked us. I mean, there's so many stories.
The international game's a whole nother level. Yeah, that'd be fun. We'll do a part 2 for sure. We'll set that up down the road for sure. Thank you so much. That was Monty Cox. Guys, check out that fight coming up. Pat Miletich, Michael Nunn, going to be exciting. And it was great to talk to Monty. We got more to come right here on In This Corner.